Welcome to Getting to Know Chronicle. I'm John Stoner, a member of the adoption engineering team at Google Cloud, and today we are going to tackle risk score, conditional logic, and mathematical operators, all in the context of the outcomes section in YARA-L. I hope we aren't biting off too much in this video, but let's give it our best shot. While we are going to apply the concepts of conditional logic and mathematical operations to a risk score today, it's important to understand that conditional logic, also known as if-then-else statements, and mathematical operators are not limited to calculating risk score. However, risk score was the first outcome variable created in Chronicle. It is considered a special variable as its value, when created in a rule, is represented in an alert queue as a numeric that analysts can use. The concepts of conditional logic are the same no matter if this is a single event rule or a rule with multiple events. However, the implementation will depend on a couple of factors. Specifically, is the field a repeated field? That is, can it have more than one value? And is the rule using a single event for the detection, or is it using multiple events? To illustrate this, let's take a look at a rule that detects admin shares. In our first example, we are looking for process launch events that meet a specific set of criteria in the target process command line field. Here we can see a version of the rule with its results. We could add a risk score using conditional logic here by adding an outcome variable like this. Risk score equals if process principal user department equals information technology, then 20, then 10, else 20. But wait a second, we're getting a syntax error. Why is that? When we click on the syntax checker, we can see that repeated fields require aggregation. Yes, even for single event rules with no match. What if we decided to use some other criteria for a non-repeated field, like principal user title? In that case, we'd have risk score equals if process principal user title equals intern 50, otherwise else 20. Notice our rule syntax is good, and when we test it, we can see that 4 detections have a risk score of 50 as the title of the user is intern, whereas the other titles are assigned a risk score of 20. While basing risk score on a user's title may not be ideal, hopefully you get the idea. For example 2, let's circle back to the repeated fields. To use them in a rule based on a single event, we need to prepend an aggregation function to the conditional logic. Let's change our risk score to look at the repeated field department, but this time let's prepend max to our expression. Risk score equals max if process principal user department equals information technology 20, else 50. When we test our rule, we can see that detections from the users not in the IT department will have a risk score of 50, but the IT staff will only have a risk score of 20. Which brings us to example 3. Our analysts probably don't want to have all of these detections individually because many of them are occurring within the same time frame, just from different data sets. Let's add a match section and group by host name over 5 minutes. Notice how the same outcome variable with the max function works here because we are already aggregating the repeated value. Which leads us to example 4, our final one of this video. Let's add a mathematical operator to our risk score and use both the department and title to build the risk score. So here we have risk score equals max if process principal user department equals information technology, then 20, else 50, plus the max if process principal user title equals, or in this case contains intern, no case, then 5. As mentioned throughout our videos relating to outcome, all UDM fields that are part of the multi-event rule need to have an aggregate function associated with it. So our condition logic for the title also needs to be prepended by an aggregate function. Here we are getting a max value based on the department of the user and then adding to it a value of 5 if the title of the user contains intern. If you do not specify an else, the expression is still valid, it just won't do an else. Notice that the conditional logic can accept expressions, including string matches and regex, as well as the no case modifier. When our test rule completes, we can see that the risk score has been updated to meet our new criteria. Wow, that was a lot. We covered a bunch of concepts here, and if you aren't quite sure about all of them, don't worry. We'll continue to use outcomes and build on these concepts further, so this won't be the last time you see this. Just remember that the risk score is a reserved variable name that can be found in the alerts queue. Conditional logic can also be used throughout our outcomes, not just in risk score. It is set up as if field operator value, then X, else Y. Finally, mathematical operators including addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and modulus can be used throughout the outcome section. There are some additional uses for mathematical operators, but they're beyond the scope of this video, so keep an eye out for them. Finally, don't forget that the aggregate functions are needed when working with multiple events in a rule or when repeated fields are being used, even in a single event rule. If you want to learn more about Chronicle, check out my blog series called New to Chronicle for more handy tips. We have a number of community YARA-L detections at our GitHub site and are continually adding more. And don't forget to engage the security community at googlecloudcommunity.com. Thanks.